Hi everyone, welcome to my channel where I explain economics in simple terms. Today we're going to talk about GDP or Gross Domestic Product. What is GDP and why does it matter? How is it calculated and what does it tell us about the economy? Stay tuned to find out. What is Gross Domestic Product, GDP? Gross Domestic Product, GDP, serves as a comprehensive indicator of a country's economic well-being, representing the total market value of all finished goods and services produced within its borders during a specific period. While GDP is typically calculated annually, it is also computed every quarter. In the United States, for instance, the government publishes an annualized GDP estimate for each fiscal quarter and the entire calendar year. The data sets within this report are presented in real terms, meaning they are adjusted for price fluctuations, thereby providing a net value that accounts for inflationary effects. Understanding Gross Domestic Product, GDP. The calculation of a country's GDP encompasses various components, such as private and public consumption, government spending, investments, changes in inventories, construction costs, and the foreign trade balance. Exports contribute positively to GDP, while imports are subtracted from it. Among these components, the foreign trade balance plays a significant role in influencing a country's GDP. If the value of goods and services sold by domestic producers to foreign countries exceeds the value of foreign products bought by domestic consumers, the country experiences a trade surplus. This surplus tends to boost the GDP. Conversely, when domestic consumers spend more on foreign products than domestic producers earn from selling to foreign consumers, it leads to a trade deficit, which can decrease the GDP. GDP can be computed in two ways, nominal and real. Nominal GDP is based on current market prices, while real GDP adjusts for inflation, providing a more accurate representation of long-term economic performance using constant dollars. For instance, let's consider a country that had a nominal GDP of $100 billion in 2012, and by 2022, its nominal GDP increased to $150 billion. However, prices also rose by 100% during the same period. If we only looked at the nominal GDP figures, the country's economy performed well. However, when considering real GDP, expressed in 2012 dollars, the actual economic performance would show a decline, with the real GDP being $75 billion. This highlights the importance of using real GDP to understand the proper economic growth or decline, adjusting for the effects of inflation. Types of Gross Domestic Product. Gross Domestic Product, GDP, can be presented in various ways, each offering slightly different insights into the economy. Nominal GDP. Nominal GDP calculates economic production by considering current prices, including the effects of inflation. It includes all goods and services valued at the prices they are sold for in the given year. Nominal GDP is usually expressed in the local currency or converted to US dollars at exchange rates for financial comparison between countries. Real GDP. Real GDP is an inflation-adjusted measure that reflects the number of goods and services produced by an economy in a given year, holding prices constant from a base year. This adjustment removes the impact of inflation or deflation, allowing a focus on real changes in production over time. It helps differentiate between growth due to increased production versus growth driven solely by rising prices. Economists use a GDP price deflator to adjust for inflation, comparing the current year's output to the base year's price levels. Real GDP provides a more accurate representation of an economy's actual growth. GDP per capita. GDP per capita measures the GDP value attributed to each individual in a country's population. It indicates the average productivity or living standards per person and can be stated in nominal, real, or purchasing power parity (PPP) terms. Per capita GDP is used to assess overall national wealth and prosperity. It allows economists to analyze domestic productivity and compare the productivity of different countries. A growing per capita GDP, along with a stable population, could be a result of technological advancements increasing productivity. Additionally, high per capita GDP with a small population may indicate a self-sufficient economy relying on abundant special resources. These perspectives on GDP provide valuable insights into an economy's performance, enabling policymakers and analysts to understand the various factors influencing economic growth and development. GDP growth rate. The GDP growth rate is a crucial indicator that measures the percentage change in a country's economic output over a specific period, typically comparing it year over year or quarter over quarter. This rate is widely used by economic policymakers because it is closely linked to key policy objectives like controlling inflation and managing unemployment rates. When the GDP growth rate accelerates, it can indicate that the economy is growing at a rapid pace. While this may seem positive, it can also be a signal that the economy is overheating and at risk of inflationary pressures. In response, central banks may consider raising interest rates to cool down the economy and prevent excessive inflation. On the other hand, a shrinking or negative GDP growth rate, commonly referred to as a recession, is concerning for policymakers. It suggests that the economy is contracting, leading to reduced economic activity and potential job losses. Central banks respond to such situations by lowering interest rates and implementing stimulus measures to encourage spending and investment to revive economic growth. In summary, the GDP growth rate serves as a vital tool for policymakers to assess the health of the economy and make informed decisions about monetary and fiscal policies to maintain stability and support sustainable economic growth. GDP formula. GDP can be determined through three main approaches: the expenditure approach, the output or production approach, and the income approach. All three methods should yield the same GDP figure when correctly calculated. The expenditure approach, also known as the spending approach, calculates GDP by considering the spending of various groups within the economy. In the United States, GDP is primarily measured using this approach, which can be represented by the formula: GDP equals C plus G plus I plus NX, where C equals consumption, G equals government spending, I equals investment, NX equals net exports. Each of these components contributes to the overall GDP of a country. Consumption, C, refers to private consumption expenditures or consumer spending. It represents the money spent by individuals on goods and services, such as food, clothing, and services, like haircuts. Consumer spending is a significant portion of GDP, accounting for more than 2/3 of the U.S. GDP. Government spending, G, includes government consumption expenditure and gross investment. It comprises the money spent by the government on various activities, such as infrastructure development, public services, and salaries of government employees. Government spending becomes more crucial relative to other GDP components during periods of decreased consumer spending and business investment, like during recessions. Investment I represents private domestic investment or capital expenditures by businesses. It includes spending on machinery, equipment, and other productive assets. Business investment is vital for GDP as it enhances an economy's productive capacity and contributes to employment growth. Net exports, NX, are calculated by subtracting total imports from total exports. NX equals exports, imports. This component accounts for the goods and services produced domestically that are exported to other countries, minus the imports purchased by domestic consumers. It reflects a country's international trade balance and is influenced by the competitiveness of its goods and services in global markets. These three approaches allow economists to comprehensively analyze GDP from different perspectives, providing valuable insights into the overall health and performance of an economy. That's all for today, folks. I hope you learned something new about GDP and how it measures the value of goods and services produced in a country. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more economics videos. And don't forget to leave a comment below with your questions or feedback. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.